So detailed analysis. Let's continue with it on that theme of analyzing the matric results of 2021. Let me tell you now that over 200,000 candidates set for the exams in KwaZulu-Natal. And joining us now is the province's MEC for Education, Kwazi Mshengu, who joins me now from KwaZulu-Natal. MEC, thank you. 76.8% in as far as, percentages go. It's important to keep track of that because it tells the story of out of all the, the entire cohort of people who sat for the exams, how many passed? It is a high number, 76.8, and I do suspect that it could have even been better. But by your standards, it is a bit of a decline of 0.8% from 2020. Just your overall impressions of how well your province did and what the challenges were in terms of Matric 2021.
Well, Thulasizwe, we are quite content actually with the pass percentage of 76.8, which is a decline of 0.8% from 2020. Under the circumstances of 2021, we think really the class of 2021 was a resilient class. You will recall, Thulasizwe, that in 2020, this class was a grade 11. Which lost so much time because of COVID-19 regulations and the lockdown. They were also subjected to alternating days in school, so they lost so much in terms of curriculum coverage. So when they got to grade 12, they got to grade 12 with really discernible learning gaps, which had to be attended to before we even start with the curriculum of grade 12. You will also recall that the province experienced bad unrest in July, which resulted in us having to cancel our annual matric intervention winter classes. But also the infections were kept on disrupting our schooling system. So we believe that under those circumstances and other related challenges, internal challenges in the department, we performed quite well. But also in terms of real numbers, to Lasizwe, we had said ourselves that we need to increase those who pass in terms of real numbers. And in year 2020, we had passed learners who are 104,000. And this time around, it's 127,000 learners who passed. And as you have correctly said, that we have also seen increase in terms of quality now. We are, in fact, leading in terms of the bachelor passes. We had 61,000 learners obtaining bachelor passes. A number of them also got diplomas, but also in terms of distinctions, we are also leading in terms of the entire country as the province of KwaZulu-Natal. We have also seen an increase of schools that pass at 100% from 140 to 145, but also a serious increase of schools between that passes between 91% to 100%, which are quintile 1, quintile 2, and 3 schools, and those schools are in rural areas in the main. So you can see that our system is really maturing and is able to absorb any kind of shocks.
So the situation is a far cry from where we were a few years ago, in terms of the performance of the province of KwaZulu-Natal. I remember all those years ago, it must be about 4 or 5 years ago, the performances that we were seeing at that point that led to calls for changes in the executive leadership of education at the time. But if we are to look at the formula and say, what is it that happened, given all the obstacles and stumbling blocks that kept falling in the way of these young people in 2021, including, human factors where people who should know better just got in the way of education from time to time, as well as the other circumstances you spoke to at the start of this interview. If we are looking for a formula, what stood you in good stead? How do you explain this performance that is improved? Slight decline, but it's still a decent and commendable performance on the part of these young people. Where did it come from?
Well, I think the first variable at Thulasizwe will be the dedication, commitment, and resilience of educators. Because as we lost so much time in 2021, they dedicated themselves to recover the time lost through teaching over the weekends and after schools. There was a time, Thulasizwe, where teachers in KZN were teaching 7 days a week. And that showed the commitment that they have in saving the future of our nation, because these kids are a future of our country. So that will be the first variable. But also, we were quite focused at head office level, because we realized that if we were to perform better, we must give direct and efficient support at a schooling level, because that's where teaching and learning is. And our focus was to make sure that each and everything we do must be accountable as to how it improves the performance at a schooling level. We had to strengthen our monitoring mechanisms, so that even subject advisors and circuit managers who provide direct support almost on constant basis to schools are accountable to say, when you go to a school, what did you find, how are you going to attend to that, and we re-evaluate whether we are succeeding in that regard. But the deployment also of the limited resources that we have direct to schools, we think made us to be able actually to withstand the pressures and other disruptions that we experienced in 2021.
So those are the positives, but let's focus on the not so positives. Which regions and areas continue to be of concern to you, just from the data analysis and analyzing the performance of the class of 2021? Where do you believe your interventions should be focused?
Well, there are two districts that are really worrying us. It's a district of Umzinyati, as well as Utugela, which will cover the Ladysmith part. I mean, over the years, really, we're not recording increase that is appreciated in those districts. So we have taken a decision that we'll have to pay more focus in those two districts. But also, there were districts that declined unexpectedly. That will be Umkungundlovu, Umlazi districts, which really are not so much rural. And in our view, those are districts that should be performing at the top, because they enjoy better infrastructure and access to things compared to the rural district of Zululand, which actually improved, as well as King Cetshwayo district. So we have had that analysis of districts, but also we'll be zooming down to circuits and schools which are not performing well. We might also say, Thulasizwe, we are quite happy that there is no school that scored 0% this time around in KwaZulu-Natal. You will recall, I think last year we got 6 schools that recorded 0%, and this time around there is not a single school, so which means that we are indeed on the right course.
And MEC, as we speak right now, the education year is off to a really difficult start in your province. Close to 200 schools, you were telling us a few days ago, affected by the inclement weather and rains and storms and flooding, etc., over the last few days. But add to that, in the area of Mkambatini, a number of schools not being able to open at the moment. What's the update? Let's start with the schools. You had done an assessment, and I think 54 of those schools were immediately brought to the front in terms of priority. Where do we stand in as far as the schools' damaged infrastructure?
Well, those schools that were damaged by the inclement weather conditions are actually operating, except for the 6 around Ladysmith. The 6 is as a result of the inaccessibility to those schools. Some bridges have been destroyed by these floods, so it's difficult to access. In other areas, bridges are underwater, and as the weather improves, we are hoping that the water levels will subside, so that at least by Monday, those schools are able to start. But we are also putting up a contingency plan that in case it is not possible, we start redeploying these learners into different schools, so that they can at least start also benefit from teaching and learning. In Mkambatini, the situation is still tense. Our educators did go to school yesterday and today, but the problem was largely learners who did not pitch up because of parents withholding their learners. We know that there are threats again that continue to put parents at a level of panic that if you send your learners to schools, we are going to attack you in the afternoon. And given the history of that area, you really can understand the fear of the parents and educators. But the Premier has started the process of intervening directly on the issue of the chieftaincy around that area, which is really the cause of all the situation that we are facing up in Mkambatini. I know that yesterday he met with one group. He has committed.
Finish that thought.
He has committed also to continue. The Premier will then be continuing with the engagement with different stakeholders in the area to try and bring stability so that we can reopen our schools. We are hoping that at least by Monday, all our schools will be opened.
MEC, I don't get a sense of urgency on the part of your government as a whole, and this is not to pin it on you directly. Day before yesterday, you said you were confident that the security plan would kick into gear, allowing for the opening of schools in that area of Mkambatini. Well, you are saying that part of the challenge was parents not sending their children to school for fear that something might happen to either their children or to themselves. There were instances in that area where the dispute is playing itself out, where parents sent their children to school, teachers showed up, where a school principal who was saying, well, there are no police, and we had hoped that there would be a police deployment, and it just wasn't there. Overall, it seems to me that there isn't a sense of urgency. These young people have lost 3 days of schooling at the start of the schooling year.
It's really our concern, Thulasizwe, that we have lost, as we are saying, 3 days, and each day in the sector is quite important. And we have also raised the concern that the police are too thin on the ground, and they are not responding in the manner that we had anticipated, and we were briefed to be the plan of the security cluster. And we have raised that with the MEC for community safety in the province, as well as the Premier, to say we think we need to step up the interventions there, because it's really hampering education. We have lost 3 days. We don't know what will happen over the weekend as well as Monday, next week. Yeah. So the sooner we resolve the issue of the chieftaincy there, the sooner really the security clusters take charge of the area, because we need to instill fear to the criminals, that if you dare decide to hurt these innocent learners and educators, there will be consequences. The state will descend upon you. But we're not getting that sense of police that are in charge in the area. So we will continue to raise these matters, because we need to safeguard the future of these learners. And the more they lose days, the more they will run into problems.
I can't agree with you more, MEC. Thank you for that candid, engagement with that part. Because in some instances where, for instance, the headmaster received a call from an anonymous person, that's where the investigations should start. Who's this person that called? And investigations in areas like those should be quite easy to identify who are the people who are terrorizing the community. Anyway, I've got to thank you, MEC Kwazi Mshengu. Congratulations on the work for the class of 2021.
Thank you so much.
And hopefully we can improve from here on in for the class of 2022. That's Kwazi Mshengu. He's the MEC for Education there in KwaZulu-Natal, responding to the outcomes, the results that were announced by the Minister of Education last night overall, and also focusing on his province of KwaZulu-Natal.